Hello there, and welcome to another special edition Citizen Academy video. In this video, we're going to be examining the two additional variations to the Vanguard line of ships. And these ships are on sale right now on the RSI website until September 7th, 2015. And the three ships are the Warden, which comes with 24 months of insurance, the Harbinger, which comes with lifetime insurance, as well as the Sentinel, also with lifetime insurance. Now, the Vanguard was heavily influenced by the P-38 Lightning, which was a fighter craft during World War II. And here's a little picture of it right here. So let's go over the features that are common for all three of these ships, and then we'll verge off and talk about the distinct differences between all three. The Vanguard line of ships are designed basically for one general function, and that is to go on long-range missions to weaken or otherwise destroy the enemy. So these ships really are not designed for like huge space battles that take a long time to get through. They are designed to go long range, engage the enemy, and get out really quick. And to help them fulfill this role, the Vanguards are known for being incredibly sturdy spaceships. In the Star Citizen lore, there have been stories of Vanguards returning to base with huge gaping holes in the sides of their hull, and they're still able to make it back safely. So these are pretty sturdy little ships. Something else about these ships that you should know is that, in a way, these three variants of the Vanguard are designed to work as one. For example, the Sentinel is designed for electronic warfare, so it would go in first and scramble signals, mess up communications between the enemy ships, and so on. Then the Harbinger torpedo ship would go in there and just totally kick ass and blow the crap out of everybody. And then the Warden, which is the general-purpose fighter, would basically go in last and mop up what's left over. Oh, yes, and two more things really quick. The wings here on either side, these fold in and out. And my educated guess on this is that they would fold in as they're trying to escape from the enemy, because this significantly reduces their radar footprint, which makes them a little bit more difficult to detect. Also, to aid in their long-range missions, each of the Vanguard ships have extra fuel tanks underneath the wings that are detachable and replaceable, but you really can't see that in these pictures here. Now let's discuss the differences between these three variants of the Vanguard. The Warden, which you can see here, is a very long-range vessel, as are all the Vanguard ships. It's an all-around good fighting vessel. However, it's not the kind of ship that does very well in close-range dogfighting. The Harbinger, which you can see here, or is it pronounced Harbinger? Harbinger? Anyway, whatever. Again, this is also a long-range vessel. Now, this is a ship that can pack some serious damage on the enemy. It comes with 3 large size 2 torpedoes. It is pretty good at doing dogfighting, but only after it has deployed its payload of torpedoes. And something else that's really cool about this ship in particular is that because it has such a small radar footprint, you can get in fairly close to, for example, large capital ships and fire off its torpedoes and then get the heck out of there fast. The Sentinel here is a very unique ship. This ship is designed for electronic warfare. So it goes into where all the enemy ships are. It blocks their transmissions, sends out fake signals, scrambles communications, that sort of thing. Now, one other thing that makes the Sentinel really unique is because it has such a large sensor array, and a very powerful one at that, it's very good at dogfighting amongst asteroid fields and nebulas as well. And one final note about the Sentinel is that the electronic warfare game mechanic has been worked out in great detail by CIG. Now, they were pretty vague when they announced that, but I would assume that means that sort of gameplay, if you decide to pursue that role, is going to be really friggin' amazing. Now, one thing that makes all three of the Vanguards fairly unique from other ships in the Star Citizen universe is that they have a central sort of escape pod module within each of the ships. And the way these work is, let's say you're out there in space and your Vanguard gets attacked and your ship is about to blow up. The two members of the crew would run into the escape pod module thing like this, and it would detach out of the bottom of the Vanguard. Then once it got to a certain distance away from the ship, it would engage these little, I would assume, micro thrusters and maneuver out of the way just far enough away, I guess, so that if the ship were to blow up, they wouldn't be hurt. Now, we don't know very much about the functionality of these escape pods once they're disengaged from the ship. I would assume that the thrusters, like I said, are just for getting away from the main ship. And I would also assume that there is some sort of a emergency beacon that you can send out from the escape pod, and that it has minimal life support on board that pod as well. Something else that is unique about all the Vanguards is that the cockpit seat rides on a rail, which you can see here. And here is a little video showing how that works. Now, the reason why this rail system was set up is that the actual cockpit that the pilot sits in is so tiny and so cramped that there really isn't room to sort of maneuver around the outer edge of the seat to get into the seat from the front. So you have to sort of be loaded into the cockpit area on that rail system. And as you can see here, the cockpit area is really, really tiny. One other cool feature with all the Vanguards is the manner in which you get into the top gun turret. And that is through this sort of extending support post that is attached to the back of the seat, which you can see here, which rises up and places you inside the upper gun turret. And here is a little video that shows that in operation. And finally, the last thing that all three have in common is the way that you get into the ship. Now, because the cockpit is so tiny and so cramped in there, you really can't access the ship at that point. So what you do is you access the ship from the back through this extendable ramp, which you can see here. So what I want to do now is take a series of cross-sections of all three of these Vanguards and do a sort of overlay so we can get a clearer idea of what the differences are between these ships. So let's take this view first. And you want to pay particular attention to these three areas of the ships, because that's where all the major differences are. So here is the Warden cross-section, and then here is the Harbinger cross-section, and finally, here is the Sentinel cross-section. And I think you can really clearly see in those three areas how these ships are different. Okay, now let's take a look at the opposite side of the ships. And again, here is the Warden, and here is the Harbinger, and finally, here is the Sentinel. Now, in general, the differences between these ships are, of course, the escape pod, the weapons loadout, the way they look on the outside as far as the paint job, and a little bit of the paint job on the inside. And also, you can't tell on these cross-sections, but the cockpit designs for all three of these is going to be slightly different. But we don't have much information on that yet. Now let's take a closer look at all those escape pods. Now, the Warden is the most basic of the escape pods, and you can see one side of the cross-section here. It comes with a sort of what appears to be a kitchen-type area right here, a central computer station here, which I would assume you could use to control various aspects of the ship from, and finally a sink, shower, and toilet section over on this side here. On the opposite side of the escape pod, you have this section here on the left, which is a weapons rack. Then in the center here, various storage lockers. And on the right, the two bunk beds for sleeping. For the Harbinger escape pod, we have the same kind of sink and shower system as we had in the Vanguard. Then over here on this side, basically the same kind of sleeping bunks over here. Now on the opposite side of where you're going to be sleeping, you have this 3 massive size 2 torpedoes. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I don't like the idea of sleeping 5 feet away from 3 massive torpedoes. I would have some weird dreams. And finally, for the Vanguard Sentinel, on the electronics warfare side, we have over here on the left a workbench for doing repairs to electronics. And then in the central area here, sort of a huge computer core for handling all the various nasty electronic stuff you'll be doing to your enemies. And then over here on the right are all the various computer stations for doing programming, sending out various scrambling codes and other nasty stuff like that. And then on the opposite side, basically the same system as the other two. You got your shower, toilet, your sink over here on this side, and the 2 bunks over here. Now, one thing that I have read about on the various online forums is that people have questions on what is going on with all this empty space above the cockpit area, the escape pod, and the entry hatch area. I mean, it's sort of dark in there and you really can't see what's going on. Well, what we've been told is that in this front section here, that's where all the avionics for the ship are going to be. And then in the back section over here is where the shield generators are going to be located. And then further back in this area is where various ammunition for the ship will be stored. So that solves that mystery. Now on the Harbinger variant, there is this really large manned turret up on the top here that fires rockets. And here is a little video showing the various views of that system. So each of these pods holds 18 rockets in the front and then 18 more in the back. And then as you go around to this side, there is sort of a belt drive system that feeds more rockets into the chambers. Now, one thing that I'm not sure about is, with this belt drive system, how far is this turret going to be able to turn to the left and to the right? I mean, it seems to me that this belt drive system is going to sort of get in the way of this thing turning to any great extent. But we'll see what happens as the ship is further developed. Now, a question that very easily comes up is, should you get the Harbinger or should you get the Retaliator, which is also a torpedo-based ship? Well, to help you answer that question, I've made this handy-dandy little chart here, which shows the features of all 3 of the Vanguards, compared to the Retaliator torpedo ship, and also the Herald, which, from what I've heard, is also rumored to be able to engage in electronic warfare, so we can compare that to the Sentinel as well. Now, the major differences between the Harbinger and the Retaliator are, in my opinion, that the Retaliator is a much bigger ship, 71 meters versus 37 meters in length. It's also a much heavier ship, 188,000 kilograms versus only 52,000 kilograms. So the Harbinger is much more nimble when it comes to consuming fuel than the Retaliator. So there's a plus right there for the Harbinger. On the other hand, the Retaliator has 128 cargo units, whereas the Harbinger has 0. But going in the other direction, the Harbinger only needs 2 people to crew the ship, whereas the Retaliator, to be most efficient, should have a crew of 6. So the logistics of running the Retaliator are going to be a bit more complex. And of course, there are lots of pluses and minuses to each of these ships for like thrusters and shield size and various weapons and whatnot. But the other major difference between those two is the Harbinger only has 3 torpedoes, whereas the Retaliator has 6. So it's able to pack a much more serious punch. The Retaliator also has a lot more weapons to defend itself than the Harbinger, so that's something else to consider. And they're both basically the same price. But again, you have to keep in mind what the functions are for these ships. The Harbinger is meant to go into where the enemy is really fast, do the damage it needs to do, and get out of there really fast. The Retaliator is designed more for short-range, longer engagement type battles. It doesn't have to sneak in and sneak out really fast. It can stay there for the long haul and get the job done. And as far as the Sentinel compared to the Herald goes, the major difference is the Herald is a much smaller ship, and its main function is to take sensitive information from point A to point B. It's not designed for any kind of military engagements at all. It's just meant as an information transporter. And also, I get the impression that the Herald is meant to be a sort of a lone ship out there that's just transporting information, whereas a Sentinel is designed to work with its two siblings, the Warden and the Harbinger, when it's engaging in military operations. But then again, the Herald is only $85. At least that was the price at the last concept sale. So when it comes out again on sale, it might be a different price. So as you can see, all of these ships have their pluses and minuses, and also, of course, depends on your style of gameplay that you want to do within the Star Citizen universe. Now, one final thing I want to mention is that if you already own a Vanguard Warden that you bought at the last concept sale a few months ago, you can upgrade your current ship to the Harbinger for $30, or you can upgrade it to the Sentinel for $15. But on top of that, you can also get something called an upgrade kit, which work for any of the ships. So you can kind of think of this as an overhaul of your existing Vanguard to any of the other two Vanguard variants. So it's going to upgrade the escape pod, the weapons, loadout, and I'm not sure if it changes the appearance on the outside. But the cool thing about these are that you can swap these in and out at will to essentially change the function of your Vanguard to whichever variant you want. So the one for the Warden costs $10, the one for the Harbinger is $45, and the upgrade kit for the Sentinel is $25. Well, there you have it, a little look at the 3 Vanguard variants. I hope this video was helpful to all of you who are thinking of buying one of these Vanguard ships. And as always, if there's anything you want to say about this video, please leave me a comment. I'm always very interested in interacting with my viewers on the comments section of my YouTube channel. And if you really want to show support for Citizen Academy, please click on that little red subscribe button down below. Until next time, this is Citizen Academy, wishing all of you fame and fortune in the verse.